Even though the Minnesota Timberwolves made a surprise run to the Western Conference Finals and made it to the Final Four for the first time in more than 2 decades, there's drama around the Timberwolves' sale as an organization, and then we know what the front court situation is with Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. Is it sustainable? Can it last long term? And can the T-Wolves win with the Twin Towers? There's also been rumors about a role change looming for Karl-Anthony Towns. So could that open up the door for the Golden State Warriors to trade for him? We're talking about that on today's Warriors Today, and this is why you subscribe. This is your off-season home for all things Warriors. We have you covered with year-round coverage as well. Draft, free agency, in-season, news, rumors, analysis. We do it all, so hit that sub button. Join the Dub Nation family here at Chat Sports. And with that, let's talk some Warriors right now. This is Golden State Warriors Today by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. No matter where you are, how you're tuned in, we appreciate all of you for making today's show a part of your day. I take a look at the analytics all the time, and we have people who watch this show from every pocket of America, also worldwide. So to be in the saddle, to be the host of this show, it is an absolute honor. Let's start off with Karl-Anthony Towns and the Warriors' pursuit potentially of him. According to Brian Windhorst of ESPN, in the deal zone, there are questions about Karl-Anthony Towns in Minnesota. Here's what Windy had to say on the ESPN Hoop Collective podcast. I do not think they would tear the team apart. However, I do think there's a possibility if the ownership change took place that Karl-Anthony Towns' role would be reevaluated. Now, when I read that, and when I say it to myself, I don't read that as if his role on the basketball team is going to change. To me, it sounds like his role with the organization and him being a part of it could change. And Karl-Anthony Towns is such an up and down player. Against the Denver Nuggets, the reigning NBA champions, he had flashes of greatness. And you're like, man, Cat is finally putting it together on the big stage, helping to lead the T-Wolves on a long playoff run. But then in the Western Conference Finals, outside of the Game 4 matchup against the Mavericks, in which he had a couple of really big shots down the stretch, he was not good against Dallas. And the split certainly backed that up. It was a tale of 2 Towns against the Nuggets. And that game, in that series, that went the distance, all 7 games. 18.5 points per, 9 rebounds. He shot 51% from the floor. 39% from long range, and in the plus-minus category, Cat was plus 17. I thought at times he did a good job of defending Nikola Jokic. He caused some matchup problems against the Nuggets as well. Denver couldn't really figure out a player who could consistently stick him when Cat was able to actually stay on the floor because he was in foul trouble a lot. The lack of discipline there continues to be a huge issue. And against the Mavs in that 5-game series, again, outside of Game 4, the points per game went up. The rebounds, though, went down. The field goal numbers went down. The three-point numbers were cold as ice at 24%. And then the plus-minus, a huge change there, all the way down to minus 16. And going into that series, I like the Mavs to win because they have 2 of the best closers and contested shot makers in the NBA. But I thought if the T-Wolves were to win that series, it would be because they have the size advantage with Cat and Rudy Gobert. Against a Mavs team that has Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford, they're a little bit smaller. The size wasn't really a problem for Dallas, and Cat's struggles were a big part of that. Now, my take on this, it wasn't all bad for Cat. He played some of the best defense on Nikola Jokic that we've seen to this point back in round 2. And certainly his defense has waned a little bit. It's been inconsistent on both ends of the floor. I've seen him get dominated by the likes of Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic. But then against Jokic, there were stretches in which he was using his length, using his athleticism, and his physicality to hold up well on that end of the floor against arguably the best player in the sport, although right now I think that is Luka Doncic. Production has never been an issue for Karl-Anthony Towns. It's all about how he plays in the big moments, and the big moments have been few and far between during his stint in Minnesota because they have lacked a lot of playoff success. It looks as though the arrow is pointing up with him and Anthony Edwards, who is a blossoming superstar, but the inconsistency considering the size and the raw ability of Karl-Anthony Towns is very, very frustrating to watch because you're like, what are you thinking? What are you doing? Why are you not better at moments? And then sometimes he'll pop off for 30, 40, and you're like, this is who you can be. Now, we kind of know who Cat is. 2020 to 2022, he's averaging around 25 points per game. And then as Anthony Edwards has gotten better, his numbers have gone down a little bit naturally. The three-point numbers have continued to be very, very good for a big. He can space the floor. He's very efficient as far as the overall numbers go. It's really just him coming up small in big spots and then being an undisciplined player. All that being said, it probably comes across as if I would never want Cat on the Golden State Warriors. That's not the case. I actually think that Karl-Anthony Towns would be a great fit in providing spacing for Steph, the two-man game with Steph, and then you think about his fit in this organization. I think that the Warriors as a basketball operation would be able to bring the best out of Karl-Anthony Towns because they've done that with countless players in the past, and they could fully tap into his potential. Here's what Andy Bailey, a Bleacher Report, had to say. If, however, the Mavericks win the conference finals in relatively short order, obviously they did, the front office might have to think about some luxury tax relief. The T-Wolves could get that salary relief picks and some combination of Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Podziemski, and or Moses Moody from Golden State. So Bleacher Report here, before the Western Conference Finals were finalized, explored and looked into a Warriors T-Wolves trade. And what ended up happening? The Timberwolves got ousted early in the playoffs. So could they look for that relief as far as the financials go? I don't think there's any chance that Golden State will gut their roster for Karl-Anthony Towns, Brandon Podziemski, Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga. That's a very tall asking price, but could you find a way to make it work knowing that the T-Wolves might be entering financial dire straits? What do you think? Should the Warriors make a trade for Karl-Anthony Towns? Why for yes and for no? It's so much easier to just say Cat. That's what I'm realizing right now. Sound off with what you think. And coming up next, what would a Cat trade look like? We're going to explore that coming up here in just a few moments. Today's show is sponsored by Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. You pick two or more players, you choose more or less on their projected stats, and you can win up to 25 times your money. You also get a $100 deposit match at prizepicks.com/CLNS. Our selections for Game 1 of the NBA Finals. There's a special right now for Jason Tatum. You can't miss it. More than a half point. I think he's going to get a bucket, ladies and gentlemen. Derek Lively, more than a half assist. I think he's going to get an assist, ladies and gentlemen. And then Daniel Gafford has been excellent for the Mavs since they acquired him. Very active on the glass. More than 6 rebounds. Win big money, withdraw your winnings. Prize Picks makes daily fantasy sports so easy. prizepicks.com/CLNS. In order for the Warriors to trade for Cat, a couple of things are going to happen here. First, Klay Thompson has to walk. Golden State is already in a little bit of a financial pickle, and we've seen ownership talk about that. The Warriors physically cannot trade for Towns as a second apron team unless Klay Thompson were to leave in free agency. So if you're interested in bringing in Cat, just know that it would come if Klay Thompson were to depart. And if you let Klay walk, that would leave a three-point shooting void that Towns could fulfill, but he's also going to provide some size and rebounding. And here's a fan-sided trade idea that we saw that we thought was pretty interesting, and let's dissect it, let's break it down. Where the Warriors get Cat, and then the Timberwolves get Chris Paul, Kevon Looney, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody. I think the T-Wolves would probably move Chris Paul again because they really like Mike Conley on that team, and it would just be a backlog of point guards and old point guards on that team. But you get Looney, good glue guy. You get a hyper athletic and talented wing in Jonathan Kuminga, and then you get a shooter in Moses Moody, and you're just building around Anthony Edwards and giving him a lot of pieces. Your new starting five for the Dubs would then be this: Steph Curry, Brandon Podziemski. You keep Andrew Wiggins and hope that he can get back to that NBA Finals form and the overall form from a couple of years ago when he was a first-time All-Star. And then, of course, you have Draymond Green and Karl-Anthony Towns in that front court. You could work with this, and then you pick up a couple of vet min options in free agency. And as we've discussed here, I don't think that the Warriors should trade Jonathan Kuminga unless the player can elevate them to a legit title contender. And can Cat do that? We saw him lift Anthony Edwards and the T-Wolves to the Final Four. But Jonathan Kuminga and a trade up him, kind of risky. Players I would trade Kuminga for, I'd be looking at Kevin Durant. I know that it works. He's still super efficient. I know that he's on the back nine of his career, the tail end of his career, but he can still play. And you're trying to go all in on trying to win a title for Steph Curry. Lauri Markkanen is a player who's very intriguing, a three-level scorer who gives you a lot of size. And then let's say you let Klay Thompson walk. You know that a backcourt mate can work with Steph. What about a player like Donovan Mitchell, who every single night can give you an easy 25 to 30 points? I like Towns. I'm not sure he's the player that makes Golden State the best team that they could potentially be when you're giving up so much to acquire him. Would you make the trade? Let me know and grade the trade. A, B, C, D, or F. We love when you join the conversation down in the comment section. And be sure to subscribe to us here on Golden State Warriors Today. I'm Chase Sr. Thank you so much for watching the show. We'll catch you next time here on Dubs Today.